Test. Oh no. Ah. Edition. I am Cynthia Nyamai. Now tonight we will be talking about the budget and the budget, and we will be giving you analysis, and because we want to give you a precise analysis, I do have someone in studio, Regina, who will also be assisting me tonight. Regina, what do you have for us tonight?
Well, the 2023-2024 proposed budget at 3.7 trillion shillings is the first budget under the Kenya Kwanza government. At that particular amount, question is, how will government be financing this proposed budget, and what does that mean to you as Wanjika? Well, tonight, in the course of this broadcast, we'll be having that candid conversation. As mentioned, I'm Regina Manyara.
Thank you, Regina. She will be having an interview for you, and also I will be telling you about drama that happened today in Parliament as the CS was presenting the inaugural Kenya Kwanza budget. That and much more, but first, let's have the highlights.
To the National Assembly to amend the VAT Act to remove the preferential rate on the petroleum product.
Not out of the woods yet. Price of goods and services likely to go up as VAT on petroleum products shoots from 8 to 16%. Investing in education, a whopping 629 billion shillings for the Ministry of Education, with junior secondary school learners key beneficiaries.
Out of the proposed allocation, Kenya shillings 12.5 billion will cater for the free primary education.
And opposition MPs walk out on Treasury CS as he presents the inaugural Kenya Kwanza budget estimates. Tonight promises to be an action-packed bulletin, even for those who don't like numbers. Regina will be telling you how this year's budget, where it will pinch you, how it's likely to affect you, and who are some of the biggest gainers. Now, the government has unveiled a 3.7 trillion shillings budget, with education getting the largest allocation. The 628.8 billion shillings allocated to education to fund hiring 20,000 teachers and implementation of the Junior Secondary School National Treasury. Cabinet Secretary Professor Jugunan Dungu introduced 2 tax bans in efforts to broaden the tax base by increasing the tax rates for those earning above $500,000 shillings.
The 2023-2024 budget is a first under the Kenya Kwanza administration, an increase of about 400 billion shillings in comparison to the 3.34 trillion shillings presented last year.
For the financial year 2023-2024, and the medium-term budget aims at undertaking a growth-friendly fiscal consolidation plan to ensure debt sustainability.
The 3.7 trillion shillings budget is anchored on 5 priority areas under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda.
We project total revenue corrections, including appropriations in aid and grants for the financial year 2023-2024 budget to be Kenya shillings 2.96 trillion.
The Kenya Revenue Authority has been tasked with collecting 2.5 trillion shillings. Appropriation in aid will account for 348.7 billion, while grants are at 42.2 billion shillings.
Total expenditure projections in financial year 2023-2024 budget is projected at 3.7 trillion, equivalent to 22.6% of GDP.
This creates a deficit of 718 billion that will be plugged by a mix of external and internal borrowing at 131 billion shillings and 586.5 billion shillings respectively.
And a fifth band that will be applicable to employees earning incomes above 800,000 per month at the rate of 35%.
To increase income tax collections, Professor Ndongo introduced 2 new tax bans for those earning above $500,000 shillings. In the budget proposals, 2.53 trillion shillings has been earmarked for recurrent expenditure, 443 billion shillings for development, while 986 billion shillings will go into servicing public debt.
Guided by the best practice, the government intends to change the public debt ceiling from a numerical number to a debt anchor in the form of a ratio of public debt to GDP in present value terms.
To support the use of clean energy, the budget seeks to increase VAT rate of petroleum products from 8% to 16%, with the exception of LPG gas. Education has the highest allocation, followed by infrastructure. Regina Manyara reporting for Prime Edition.
Very CS there as he presents the inaugural Kenya Kwanza budget, and we would like to break it down for you. So we have Regina, who is going to take you through and bring out some of the highlights that you do need to know about. Regina.
Well, now the inaugural budget under the Ruto-led administration is at 3.7 trillion shillings, which is translating to 22.6% of the gross domestic product there. That is an increase of around an estimated 400 billion shillings from the current financial year, where government actually intended to spend 3.34 trillion shillings, which is 400 billion shillings more than what we had last, or rather the current financial year. And for that particular figure, as it is, the taxman has been charged with collecting 2.9 trillion shillings, and this is how we're going to break it down. In ordinary revenue, that is 2.5 trillion shillings, while appropriation in aid will account for 348.8 billion shillings, and grants at 42.2 billion shillings. Question in this particular mathematics is that, given the track record of the taxman, will the taxman actually achieve that target? That's one of the questions we'll be asking tonight as we talk about what the ripple effect of having, or rather the proposed 3.7 trillion shillings as the budget for this current the financial year that begins on the 1st of July. The composition of total revenue, that is at 2.9 trillion shillings, including appropriation in aid, as we mentioned, and some of the contributing areas is income tax that takes the larger chunk, that is at 41%, and value-added tax at 24.1%, and excise duty coming in at 12.1%. Income tax, what does it mean, especially if you are in formal employment? There's been conversation, especially this week, with what we saw in Parliament in regard to the finance bill there. We'll be talking about that and also the value-added tax. One of the tax measures that government has put in place is actually the proposal to increase the current value-added tax that is currently at 8% to 16% on all petroleum products, with the exception of LPG gas. These manufacturers, as well as other stakeholders, have said is likely to increase the cost of living, because manufacturers are likely to incur more costs on operation, and that is going to be passed to you and I as consumers. That's just but a sneak peek of what is contained in the 3.7 trillion shillings budget. And in the course of this particular bulletin, we remind you that we're going to be unpacking that to enable you understand what it means for what you, in terms of what you're currently earning, if it's going to ensure that it's easier for you to buy that particular packet of milk or bread. The conversation will be happening in not too long. And we welcome your feedback. You can get us on KBC Channel 1. We'll be discussing the budget 2023-2024, the inaugural budget under the Kenya Kwanza administration that actually is domiciled under the bottom-up economic model. Back to you, Cynthia.
Thank you, Regina. Before you leave, I can see that you have a guest in studio. So if you could tell us a little bit about the interviews that we're going to have today and what to expect.
Now, some of the questions that we're going to be posing to our two guests, and we're going to have the first session with none other than Jim McPhee, the director of Strathmore University. He's going to help us unpack what it really means for Kenya's economy, given that what Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Ndongo, when presenting this particular budget, he went further to look at the background and the backdrop of presenting the 3.7 trillion shillings budget, saying, first of all, there's economic recovery to think about after the COVID-19 debacle that we had across the globe. It has affected how we do business. We're still in recovery. Also looking back at what the agriculture sector had to endure during the long drought, and saying that looking at the agriculture sector, we're likely to have it, bounce back with the long rains. We're going to be unpacking that from a macro economic view there, Cynthia, to try and understand what informed, those who actually sat down and drafted this particular proposed budget, and what will be, or rather what are the low-hanging fruits for the taxman with such a task of collecting 2.57 trillion shillings for the next financial year.
Thank you, Regina, for that. Now, you are among the biggest losers in this year's budget, following an increase of value-added tax on petroleum products from 8% to 16%, which is likely to impact the price of goods and services. National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u has also introduced 2 new tax bands, with those earning 500,000 shillings to be taxed at 32%, while those earning 800,000 shillings will be taxed at 35%.
Tax bands have been increased from the current upper band of 30% to a high of 35% to net more tax. Those earning between 500,000 shillings to 800,000 shillings will be taxed at 32%, while those earning above 800,000 shillings will be charged at 35%. In addition, some of those who were income tax exempt have been brought back into the tax bracket after the government taxed the Kenya Revenue Authority to collect 2.57 trillion shillings.
At the start of this journey, I proposed to the National Assembly to introduce 2 additional tax bands. A 4th band will be applicable to employees earning incomes between 500,000 per month to Kenya shillings 800,000 per month at the rate of 32.5%. And a 5th band that will be applicable to employees earning incomes above 800,000 per month at the rate of 35%.
In addition, starting next month, you are expected to pay more for fuel if Parliament adopts this year's budget proposals to increase the value-added tax on petroleum products with the exemption of LPG from 8% to 16%.
I propose to the National Assembly to amend the VAT Act to remove the preferential rate on the petroleum products so that the products will be subject to the standard VAT at 16%.
Betting and gambling is another sector that has seen its excess duty increase from 7.5% to 12.5%, with the firms required to submit their collections within 24 hours.
To discourage participation in these activities by Kenyans, and especially school-going children, I propose to the National Assembly to increase the rate of excise duty on betting, gaming, prize competition and lotteries from the current 7.5% to 12.5%.
Betting and alcohol advertisement will also be subjected to a 15% excess duty in a measure that the National Treasury says will reduce addiction. Tax on imported leather products and vegetables will attract 35% VAT.
Protect these farmers from cheap imports. Kenya has been around to extend the import duty rate of 35% in addition to the specific import duty rates on vegetable products for a further 1 year.
Benson Druba reporting for Prime Edition.
Well, those are the budget losers. Who are the budget gainers? I will be telling you more about that, but first, let's have a break.
Under the Unclaimed Financial Assets Act number 40 of 2011, to receive unclaimed financial assets from holders of such assets, the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority has taken the responsibility of safeguarding these assets seriously and reunites the assets with their rightful owners.
How unclaimed assets become unclaimed is purely through passage of time. A defined time in law has passed, and the owner of this asset and the holder have lost touch.
We received a letter from a bank telling us that they have sent the proceeds of her account to Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. So that's when the journey started.
Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority. Receive, safeguard, reunite.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Alex Odur, natoka Kamulu. Na leo imekuwa poa. Nilikuja na confidence nikijua naenda kuwin. Na nimewin 100,000 ndio hizi hapa. Wale wanacheza Loto Moto waendelee, ni kitu ya ukweli. Loto Moto, endelea kucheza kila siku.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri drop.
The Engineers Board of Kenya is a statutory body established with the mandate of regulating, setting standards, and registration of engineers and engineering consulting firms. The board, together with its stakeholders, will host the 4th Engineering Partnership Convention, EPC 2023, from 14th to 16th June 2023 at Sawela Lodge in Naivasha. The theme of the convention is Transforming Kenya's Economy, Engineers' Contribution to Development, and aims to bring together policymakers, industry experts, academics, researchers, and Kenyan engineers. This event will be presided over by His Excellency President William Ruto. To register, visit www.events.ebk.go.ke/booking. Engineers Board of Kenya, enhancing professionalism. KBC is the official media partner.
Naweza taka nini aso?
Tutajuaje?
Yaani hata uwezi jiambia kuwa waweza tafuta kijimtu. Watu wengi hawana kazi huko nje. Waweza tafuta kijimtu kikafanya hii kazi tukamlipa.
Nashuku mume wangu amekufa. Amefanya nini?
Amemuua.
Pato. Umeelewa tu, you are drunk as usual.
Nini kimewaleta kwa nyumba yangu?
Tumeambiwa kwamba kuna mtu ameuawa. Yuko wapi? Na hii si ni nyumba ya mzee Mapapa.
Wewe ulisema hiyo dawa niweke kwa chakula, sio kwa juice. Na mimi hiyo shughuli ilikuwa nianzie leo.
Sawa, kama sio basi ni nani?
Welcome back. Now, let me tell you about the gainers. Unemployed teachers are perhaps the biggest gainers in this budget after the government announced plans to employ 20,000 teachers in the next financial year. In addition, learners in junior secondary school are set to get better facilities as part of the 628.6 billion shillings allocated to education in this year's budget. You are also a beneficiary of this year's budget following the allocation of 5 billion shillings for the fertilizer subsidy program that is expected to reduce the cost of food production and ultimately reduce the retail cost of basic food items.
In the wake of speculation and criticism of the crucial debut budget of the Kenya Kwanza government released on Thursday, some sectors are indeed smiling. The education sector has received 628.6 billion shillings, representing the lion's share in the 2023-2024 financial year budget. Among the main benefactors of the 27.6% allocation to the Ministry of Education are the 20,000 unemployed teachers set to be hired in the new financial year.
Kenya shillings 4.8 billion for recruitment of 20,000 intern teachers. Kenya shillings 1 billion for the promotion of teachers. Kenya shillings 4.9 billion for the school feeding program, and Kenya shillings 940 million for the provision of sanitary towels.
To facilitate capitation towards implementation of the competence-based curriculum, 10 billion shillings has been added to junior secondary schools, increasing the total allocation to 25.5 billion shillings from the current 15 billion shillings.
Out of the proposed allocation, Kenya shillings 12.5 billion will cater for the free primary education, Kenya shillings 65.4 billion for the free day secondary school secondary education, including insurance under NHIF for secondary school students, Kenya shillings 25.5 billion for junior secondary school capitation, Kenya shillings 5 billion to support examinations fee waiver.
University students are also among those celebrating following the doubling of HELB allocation from 15 billion shillings to 30 billion shillings. The Public Service Commission will also be required to absorb 8,000 new interns from the current 4,000 annually, with each being paid a monthly salary of 25,000 shillings. Prices of basic food commodities are set to come down with a 5 billion shillings allocation to the fertilizer subsidy program that will see farmers access fertilizer at a low cost and maximize on production.
The government, working with private sector, will continue to subsidize fertilizer in order to make it available and improve productivity in counties. For fertilizer subsidy program, 8.6 billion for the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project, 2.7 billion for the National Agricultural and Rural Inclusivity Projects, 2.1 billion for the Kenya Cereal Enhancement Program, 2.8 billion for the Emergency Locust Response, 1.4 billion for small-scale irrigation and value addition programs.
All distributors who were not paid in the previous regime will receive their dues following the government's allocation of 25 billion shillings to clear the arrears. An additional 10 billion shillings will go to the Hustler Fund and 3 billion shillings to complete 181 stalled markets across the country. Trevor Ngendo for Prime Edition.
Let me now take you to the other side of our studio where Regina Manyara has an interview for you, just to give you a breakdown and analysis with Jim McPhee, the director of Strathmore University. Regina.
And on that note, we start off with this conversation. A 3.7 trillion shillings proposed budget the very first under the Kenya Kwanza administration. Is it feasible? Looking at KRA's performance that has been given a revenue target of 2.5 trillion shillings. Your take?
My take is, first of all, I think it's a good budget. And I think, we have to become very, very much more balanced in Kenya than is the case at the moment. We tend to blame other people for our problems. And I think it's so important to, first of all, to be very positive about things, because, the budget last year was quite below what it is today. But in fact, the government last year spent 3.3 billion. Because they increased it and so on. So when we look at 3.3 billion to this year's 3.6 billion, it's less than a 10% increase, in fact. We got to remember that, inflation, last October was running at 9.6%. It's come down, it's now just below 9%. But I think even from an inflation point of view, that is not a very much bigger figure. I think the focus is right. I think also we got to remember, God has been really very, very good to us this year with the rains. The rains came in early. I know some people down in Ukambani, they planted early, they've already got a crop. So if we actually are positive enough, I think we can say it's a really good budget. And let me just try to explain one of the things on VAT. I drive a car. I'm not the poorest person in Kenya. I think the people who are driving cars in Kenya can afford to pay that additional 8%, all right, of VAT. Now, what about diesel? Let's suppose that I'm a transporter and I'm going to transport for you and I'm going to charge you 200 million shillings. When I charge you 200 million shillings, I'll actually raise from you 32 billion shillings in VAT. Okay? And we always talk about spreading the tax net in Kenya. In fact, we have done so. When I was working many years ago in Ernst & Young, the top rate of tax in Kenya was 70%. The top rate today is half that, 35%. And it's for people who are earning more than 800,000 shillings a month. Not many people are actually going to suffer that. And also, the 32.5%, you've got to remember that the rate of tax in Germany and Sweden and in the Denmark and so on, those countries, the top rate of tax is 60-70%. So we are in fact living in a tax haven, although Kenyans will say, we pay so much tax.
Let me just become the devil's advocate in this particular set. And let's look at
let me just complete the thing of VAT. Now, when I charge you, I'm going to get 32 million shillings. Yes. I've actually got to, pay that across to KRA. Now, if the price of diesel goes up by, let's say 100 million shillings without the VAT, it's now 116. So when I buy this diesel, I have to pay 116 million. But that 16 million, I offset it against the 32 million that I collect from you. So in this case here, I pay 16 million, okay? So the total is going to be 32. We say, this VAT is going to put up the cost of business. Okay. Nonsense. That's because people don't understand what VAT is all about. Even some people in KRA. But no, that's another story.
Okay, so from where you sit is that this is actually a good budget.
This is a good budget.
Actually worry about the increase in VAT, especially on petroleum products. But manufacturers would actually argue it differently. First of all, the cost of energy. You see, they run their machines. They usually pass the buck to consumers. Here we are now. That element of cost of production definitely will be borne by you and I as we buy these commodities. So how is that helping me as a Kenyan who is already struggling with the high cost of living?
Now let's suppose, first of all, a lot of people will run their machines using electricity. Some people, the KTDA farmers, their factories actually burn diesel. it'll be an added cost to them. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be using, we've got plenty of, although our forest cover is, only 12%. According to the World Bank, it's 6.3%. We're trying to increase that. But to my mind, this is an industry. The whole thing of the charcoal industry is an industry which, again, is shrouded in ignorance in Kenya. And that's another story, okay? But you get me again, I'll try to explain the whole thing there. But, for example, Brazil produces 11% of the charcoal in the world, okay? We're not even on the chart there. Okay. Egypt. But anyway, in this case here, okay, let's suppose that I'm buying diesel and I'm running my machines on diesel. I will then have to pay 16% VAT. But that VAT is offset against the output VAT, which I charge you. So again, we go back to the 100 million and the 200 million. In this case here, what will happen is, instead of paying 24 million previously, I now pay less. I pay less 16 million. So putting diesel, putting VAT at 16% on VAT, if a person is telling you, look, this is going to increase the cost of doing business in Kenya, that person is ignorant. And he's got to learn.
Okay. Ignorant is the word. Okay, then we look at some of the areas that, the government has prioritized in this particular budget. We have health. We also have education. Comparing to other, budgets of the past, what would you, from where you sit then, what has really informed, these priority areas? Is it of the beta agenda?
Well, you see, I think you've got to remember that we're in a period of transition there, okay? We have the junior secondary, and what happened was, to my mind, it was quite a sensible decision to retain that in primary. Now, you've always got to think about the school, because let's suppose I'm running a private school, okay? Now, I actually have people coming in at the moment who've done KCPE, but you see, the problem now is that I'm going to have KCPE next year, but the year after that, okay, I'm going to lack a class. So I'm going to run into difficulties there. Now, since there are more children in primary schools, obviously the senior primary has got to get more money. And I think, that explains why exactly that is happening. I think all the other things, HELB is obviously going to get 30 billion instead of 15 billion. I think that's a very good thing because, but I think also at the moment I may be a very rich person. I may have you as my daughter, sending you for 16,000 shillings a year to Nairobi University. It doesn't make sense. Here, if I'm rich, there's got to be a means test. If I'm a rich person, I've got to pay full fees, and that's what the plan is in the new jurisdiction. I agree with that fully.
You agree with that. Now, since you've mentioned about, the move that the government also has adopted is that they have introduced 2 tax bands, for those who are earning 500,000
to 800.
Yeah. In expanding, but will it really have the impact that it was meant to have, given that not a majority of people actually are in this earning class or this band?
Yeah. Well, personally, I'm against raising interest tax, because I always feel, Kenya from outside is an incredibly attractive destination. If you read in The Nation what the outgoing British High Commissioner wrote about Kenya, you realize that this lady fell in love with Kenya. And let's face it, many people do that. They come to Kenya and they say, oh, well, okay, I'm not going back.
Are you speaking for yourself? Anyway, that's what
No, I was born in Nairobi, so good. I don't have to worry. But for example, I know 2 Russians, I won't tell you their names, but they're in Kenya because they don't want to fight the army, you see, so they're not going back to Russia. And they've fallen in love with Kenya. But anyway, the point here really is, I was talking to a foreign investor in about October last year, and KRA are giving him the runaround. And he said, his words to me were, look, Jim, I never realized that it is so difficult to run a business in Kenya. So, we talk at this level. We're making it easier to run business.
But on ground, it does not.
On the ground, I produce accountants. I'm educating accountants. And where are they getting jobs? Bermuda, London, Guernsey, the Cayman Islands, the United States, Canada. So, we need to expand our economy. We need to make it easier. We talk about all these things.
So let's get it. The question was expanding the tax band there, and I asked if it will have the overall multiplier effect that the government is looking at.
It's not going to produce a really significant amount of income. To my mind, it would be better to leave it at 30%. That's one area where I don't agree with the budget. But it's not going to affect too many people. Let's face it. And I think they can afford it. The only thing is, I think we're sending the wrong signal to the world, okay? Because, Kenya's got to remain as attractive as it is. You see, what we got to remember...
In terms of foreign direct investment, right?
Well,
can we pick it up from there after the break?
Okay,
well, let's take a quick break. Well, we are trying to unpack the 3.7 trillion shillings proposed budget there that was presented in Parliament, Cynthia. So I think it's time we take a quick breather, but we'll still continue having this conversation, and you can be part of the conversation. Our Twitter handle is at KBC Channel 1.
Hazina ya fidia ya wanabima, the Policy Holders Compensation Fund, PCF, shirika la kiserikali chini ya hazina ya kitaifa na mipango ya kiuchumi iliyoanzishwa chini ya sheria ya bunge kwa jukumu la kulipa fidia kwa madai ya wanabima waliowekwa chini ya usimamizi wa serikali au wale ambao leseni zao zimebatilishwa. Hazina hii pia ilianzishwa kwa lengo la kuimarisha imani katika sekta ya bima. The Policy Holders Compensation Fund, dhamana ya bima yako.
Aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
Welcome to East Africa. This is Safari Rally Kenya.
The WRC Safari Rally is set for June 22nd to June 25th in Naivasha. This year's event, the 7th leg of the WRC calendar, consisting of 19 stages, will see drivers, among them defending champion and series leader Khalid Vanpera, battle in what's considered as the toughest rally in the world. KBC Channel 1 will bring you the action to your living room, where a total of only 5 stages will be broadcast live on KBC Channel 1 and the Shakedown exclusive on our Facebook page. Catch the WRC Safari Rally on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
You're still watching a Prime Edition, and tonight we're speaking matters budget. Jim McPhee, before we took a break, you said that the only reason, or rather the only area that you do not agree with the government is in regard to, the introduction of the tax ban. Let me take you back to the issue of the VAT 16 on petroleum products. What if we're looking at right now, OPEC has reduced its production, of fuel, and supposing it's a matter of when actually the prices go up. What is the ripple effect back here at home if this particular proposal passes as is on the transport index?
Yeah, well, I think, let me try to explain this in 2 ways, okay? Because we have to remember that, 3 years ago, what happened was that the price of petroleum went down to $35 a barrel. It then went up to $100 a barrel, and even more. Is now sitting at about $70 a barrel. But you see, 2 years ago, $70 multiplied by 100 gives you 7,000 shillings. Yes. $70 at today's exchange rate will give you 9,800 shillings.
Yep.
So there's a 40% increase in the oil, in the price of oil in terms of Kenya shillings.
Yes.
Now, let's go back a little bit though. Why is the Kenya shilling losing value against the dollar? It's because of the fact that we've got a trade deficit of almost 2 trillion shillings. In other words, we're importing from the world 2 trillion shillings more than what we're exporting. Now, if the price of oil goes up, using basic economics, demand and supply, what should happen is that we should use less oil. I'm trying myself to limit my travel by car, okay? I'm 1 out of 4.5 million Kenyans who own a car, so that's nothing. But if we all did something, because the biggest single import cost to our economy is oil. Is oil itself, okay? So if we reduced, and for example, if I'm using charcoal, I was talking earlier, and you're using kerosene, I'm actually building the economy of Kenya, and you are actually increasing our trade deficit, and therefore contributing. If we had more exports than imports, the Kenya shilling would be rising against the dollar. But anyway, now back to the point.
We want
so in this case, the matatus will actually have, the matatu passengers will have to pay more if they're whether it's petrol or diesel.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll have to pay more.
We'll have to
so
pay
we
more.
need to brace.
Yeah.
So as we wind up this particular session, would you say that this particular budget is pro-Wanjiku or not? As we come to a close, in your perspective, give us the pros and cons.
Ni ngumu. Kwa sababu, the situation is that, there are always plus and always minuses. A lot of people are actually concentrating on the thing of oil, because let's face it, transport is a very, very important sector of our economy. But you see, we've also got to keep in mind that the government is spending a lot of money on education, public education. The difficulty really, is that that's always going to become harder and harder in Kenya, because 1.2 million babies are born every year. But I have young ladies I know, they're giving birth to babies, and the thing is, 384,000, more than 30% of those children are to single mothers. And they need scholarships, and you have children at school producing children, so they're not even earning. So this is going to become more and more of a burden to Kenya's economy, and I think we've got to be aware of that. Interest obviously is the biggest single item, and if we can somehow try to reduce the infrastructure bond rate, it's 14.3% at the moment.
Yes.
That would, if we were to bring it down to 10%, that would really reduce that 986 billion. But Regina, let me just mention one other thing, which is really drastic. The national government is pending bills. In other words, expenditure has been incurred, and they haven't paid the bills of 537.2 billion. And the counties 157.9 billion, to give a total of 695 billion.
And that, Jim, actually, when the CS was reading out this particular budget, he said that their plans are underway to have a task force of sort, or a committee that is going to be, I know, I can see you shaking your head, but I think this is the new CS trying to, do away with this situation that is pending bills. But we'll still have a conversation when it comes to the budget. But for now, that's the first session of our conversation tonight as we unpack the budget 2023-2024, the very first under the Kenya Kwanza administration, that is pegged at 3.7 trillion shillings. To you, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Regina. Comments have already been coming in. I can see someone saying that McPhee is actually one of the first people they've had agree with this year's budget. We will continue with another post-budget analysis with Gerald Githuku coming up shortly from the Tax Committee of ISPAC. Now, National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u has defended the housing tax, saying it will create more jobs for the youth. Addressing journalists after his 3 hours and 12 minutes budget presentation in the National Assembly, the CS says the housing tax proposal will drive Kenya's economic recovery.
I want now to say how else can we do better in terms of that. I want to refocus so much because most of the avenues that we raise, for example, the housing project, is going to be very, very important in raising jobs. What are the most serious constraints that we face? Poverty is one aspect, cost of living is part of that, but actually raising or creating jobs for the youth is very, very critical. So essentially, we have taken more time. If you read and you're going to get this press briefing, we have taken more time to look at the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. We want it to be understood. Wherever you are, whichever sector you are, you should know the importance of the sector that you're reading. We want to showcase why we are emphasizing on those sectors and why we are emphasizing on bottom-up economic transformation agenda is because it's very critical for us. That's why we have gone from human capital to jobs creation and to poverty reduction, but also make sure that we rationalize even the tax proposals that we put in. And the other one is actually resource allocation. That's a very, very important. The most important thing that will come back to us all the time is that we focused on sectors that have the largest impact. It means that once we have that large impact that creates the initial recovery and then creates momentum, then we can now go to other sectors.
Now, a section of Azimio One Kenya MPs staged a walkout from National Assembly in protest of the budget 2023-2024 presentation. Led by National Assembly Minority Leader Opiyo Wandayi, the lawmakers denounced Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u's budget pronouncement, insisting that its making process was illegitimate. The opposition is now strategizing on how to stop the finance bill that enters a third reading next week.
As soon as Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u took to the podium in the National Assembly to present the 2023-2024 budget proposals, a section of Azimio One Kenya MPs, led by the leader of minority Opiyo Wandayi, stormed out of the chambers, protesting the budget-making process.
Our sitting through his speech was going to sanitize a process which we deemed to be flawed. And secondly, it was going to legitimize a process which is illegitimate.
The Azimio MPs have been opposed to the revenue-raising measures proposed in the Finance Bill 2023, particularly the introduction of value-added tax of 16% on fuel. The opposition, however, faced their first defeat yesterday after 176 MPs voted for the Finance Bill to be read for a third time, while 81 objected. Leader of minority Opiyo Wandayi terming Wednesday's voting as illegitimate.
You saw what happened yesterday, how they rushed through a debate and vote on the finance bill at the second reading stage. And secondly, you saw how they rushed through the vote on the estimates of expenditure, budget estimates, the day the pronouncement on Sabrina Chege's matter was being made. You also for yourselves that the Speaker called the vote when we were on our feet and the House was in a state of chaos, which is against the standing orders.
The most important part of the bill is coming on Tuesday, the third reading, where we are going to deal with clause by clause. So we are preparing. This is the setting stage for that, yeah, of course.
Thank you.
And I think we have worked out because Azimio doesn't believe in this budget. They don't think this is a budget meant for the Kenyan people. This is a budget meant for the Kenya Kwanza government.
The opposition MPs are now strategizing on how to stop the third reading of the finance bill scheduled for Tuesday next week. Gishuki Washira, Prime Edition.
2023-2024 budget has elicited reactions from various political leaders, with its proponents and opponents giving their take in equal measures.
So many colleagues from the other side have seen the benefit of what we are doing. They have come in to support yesterday the finance bill. We will continue engaging them and telling them the importance of the budget. I wish they had stayed in to listen to some of the big proposals that have been made that will assist them, especially the fisher folk. I mean, for the first time, you have excise duty being imposed on fish that is being imported into the country. It tells you the fishermen today from Lake Victoria can get value for their fish. There is so much that is so good. There's a health issues. People who have retired and they want, they have now have a bit of tax rebate, 15% discounted on savings that on their savings that they are going to use for insurance after retirement, and many other beneficial things that have been read in this budget.
Whatever much of this budget is going to education, you know that. The junior secondary school. A lot of money has also been given to our universities. A lot of money has also been proposed to go to help, so that they can fund fees for our children in tertiary institutions. So a lot of resources also go to TVET, I think, which is quite good. Of course, about to fertilizer subsidy, which is a good thing, by the way, so that now we begin subsidizing production instead of consumption, as has been said by our president. Read a budget that is pro-Kenyans, that is pro-economy, that is pro-growth. And I am sure as we move forward, we will see the effect of this very well-thought budget that has been choreographed along value chains. Secondly, on the issue of our brothers and sisters, Kenya is a democratic country, and we want to keep on enjoying our democratic space. In a democracy, majority have their way, but also the minority have their say. How they wish to express their say is their prerogative. But on our side, we respect all opinions, we respect everyone, we respect divergent opinions, and we actually also respect alternatives that come on our way, because a better idea must always be given away. Or to paraphrase, a good idea must always give way to a better idea.
This is a people's budget, a budget addressing bottom of our pyramid, the common man, the common mwananchi. This budget has given a lot of attention to the people. We are talking about promoting small and medium enterprises.
They were against the 3%. They're saying that 3% is too high. You could introduce us at a lower rate. And then when they told us, even this that you're calling it a levy, you're telling that you get money back to us in 7 years, we know government struggles even to pay, for example, reimbursements for NSSF. You know, people, they were telling us that we have people that get to retire and then they have to wait quite a number of years before they get that. Because they're telling us, stop making. We understand it's a need, we understand it's important, then just make it a straight tax. And you remember even what even our brothers and sisters in the opposition were saying this is a tax. So fine, we listen now, we made it a tax so that it goes to the consolidated fund. The same way we contribute, for example, to the equalization fund.
Huchagui familia yako, ni zawadi ya Mungu kwako kama ulivyozawadi kwao. Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia, na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB. Nenda hospitalini ukapimwe. Ikibainika ya kwamba ni TB, utapewa dawa, na ukimeza vizuri ulivyoshauriwa na daktari, utapona. TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Alex Oduor, natoka Kamulu. Na show leo imekuwa poa. Nilikuja na confidence nikijua naenda kuwin. Na nimewin 100,000 days hapa. Wale wanacheza Loto Moto waendelee, ni kitu ya ukweli. Loto Moto, endelea kucheza kila siku.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
The voting is over and now it's time to award the best of the best. Kuza Awards 2023 is here. An initiative by the Communications Authority of Kenya. Kuza Awards seek to recognize and promote excellence in broadcasting in the country. The award ceremony will be held this Friday, 16th June at Movenpick Hotel. Follow this event live on KBC Channel 1 from 7:30 p.m. Kuza Awards, shaping the future of broadcasting.
Welcome back. Now, this year's budget has been increased to 3.67 trillion shillings from 3.34 trillion shillings in the 2022-2023 financial year. The external debt service is expected to increase to 475.6 billion shillings from 242.1 trillion shillings in 2022-2023. This year's budget has also reinstated the 16% value-added tax on petroleum products, except cooking gas that has been lowered to 8% in the year 2018.
The Kenya Kwanza government has pegged its first budget on the transformation agenda on 5 key pillars under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. While presenting the 3.67 trillion Kenya shillings budget, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u said the government will adopt the value chain approach to ensure the bottom-up economic transformation agenda is achieved.
Popularly referred to as BETTER, which is geared towards economic turnaround and inclusive growth. It is aligned to this agenda. It is in alignment to this agenda for this year's budget theme carries that spirit.
2022-2023 financial year priorities were on the Big Four agenda, the 2022 general elections, and the completion of infrastructure projects. The Minister of Education has received the biggest budget allocation of 628.6 billion Kenya shillings, up from last year's 513.8 billion Kenya shillings. The Kenya Kwanza government seeks to reduce borrowing, especially external borrowing that has been limited to 20% of the total borrowing.
Kenya's public debt remains sustainable, but with elevated risks of debt distress due to persistent global shocks that adversely affect the liquidity ratios. The depreciation of the Kenya shilling against major currencies and the rise of interest rates have elevated cost of debt service. Further, the depreciation of the currency has increased the size of the public debt stock, as half of the public debt is actually denominated in foreign currency.
To this effect, the government has been forced to broaden its tax base, introducing the 1.5% housing tax, the 5% taxation on creative content creators, the increased turnover tax from 1% to 3%, and VAT on petroleum products, with the exception of cooking gas, from 8% to 16%.
Fiscal policy for the financial year 2023-2024 and the medium-term budget aims at undertaking a growth-friendly fiscal consolidation plan to ensure debt sustainability. This will be achieved through improved revenue collection, primarily through broadening of the tax base and containing overall expenditure to target set, while prioritizing higher impact social and investment expenditure.
The fiscal deficit is expected to reduce by 718 billion Kenya shillings in the 2023-2024 financial year from 840.9 billion Kenya shillings in 2022-2023 financial year. Kanchemenza for Prime Edition.
The presentation of the first budget under the Ruto administration by Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u Thursday has been met with varied reactions by members of the public. While some expressed satisfaction towards some of the amendments made to the Finance Bill 2023, including the housing levy tax reduction from a proposed 3% to 1.5%, others expressed concerns over the increase in fuel tax to 16%, noting this will increase the cost of production in various sectors, which will raise the cost of living. Our reporter Nduta Mukami samples some of your views.
Inabidi apunguze uchumi kidogo, maana sisi kama watoto tunaumia, wazazi wetu hawezi kuafford chakula. Most of us here we sleep hungry. That costs us not to be focused in school.
Na madeni mengine yanakuja na vitu vinaitwa austerity measure. Austerity measure ni masharti kwamba kama wataka tukukopeshe ili deni, futa watu kutoka kwa kazi, ama uza hapa, ama ongeza ushuru kwa mafuta na mambo kama hayo. So tukitaka tujitegemee, lazima tu embrace e-saving culture.
From 8% to 16, my friend, hata siamini. Hii serikali tumechagua ni kama haina huruma. Ingepadisha hii not 8 to 16, at least maybe from 8 to 10, you could have understood. Lakini sasa hatutawaelewa na hatuwaelewi. 3% mnaambia kila Mkenya aweke. Mama ushago atawahi pata hiyo nyumba. Mkenya, kuna Wakenya walisha apply hizo nyumba mpaka leo hii. Naunga Senator Omutata mkono hiyo kitu iende kotini.
Unaenda kwa shop unakuwa frustrated kabisa na bei ya vitu imepanda kabisa. So kitu ya kwanza ni kurudisha bei ya vitu chini.
As the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u presented his over 3-hour 2023-2024 budget proposal, keyboard warriors were busy thinking with their fingers. And as Teresa Mutai observes, the day offered good and rich fodder for the ever-critical cyber surfers.
Every netizen has their own budget, so the national budget would definitely be a matter of discussion to the cyber surfers. So let's find out what they had to say. The budget day started off on a rather calm note, but as seconds became minutes, drama started unfolding. In the chilly morning, a protester decided to go on a solo mission to demonstrate outside the Treasury building. In a few minutes, he was whisked away by the police.
I am ready to die for justice. Justice is indivisible.
But the protest was not the subject that captured netizens' attention. Rather, it was the fact that this was not the protesters' first time protesting outside the government building.
Justice anywhere. To justice anywhere. Give me death or give me freedom.
Roshan asked, hii ni mara ngapi ya huyu mtu kushikwa? I like his courage. Wine, who was captivated by his voice, tweeted, that guy doesn't need a speaker. Thiaka, did they need that huge Mariamu for one guy? It seems so, Thiaka. But shortly after, it was time for the ceremonial briefcase to emerge from the Treasury building, escorted together with its holder, CS Njuguna Ndung'u, to Parliament in a grand Passat car. And these evoked a lot of conversations online. Prince wondered, mbona hii kusoma budget huwa na show off mingi? Maureen curiously, why all this security? Benjamin jokingly, siangetembea. Kenyan with a very keen eye tweeted, also please note hata serikali haija apply new number plates kwa magari. Oops, I guess the government ought to do something. Finally, it was the moment of truth and every member of parliament was already in their seats. But soon, the budget opponents walked out. This was definitely bound to ignite wildfires. Rush asked, why did they attend at first? Marvin responded, they are just being dramatic. Anonymous, puzzled, tweeted, they were present today to be absent again. George, ending the discussion, wrote, not the first time, but the business goes on. Well, winding up, we definitely wouldn't have such amazing content without the ever-present and nosy journalist on the ground who kept us in the know. For that, we salute them.
Well, that's just a few of their comments that made it to your screens. I promise you there's more on social media realms. For Prime Edition, I am Teresa Mutai.
Keyboard warriors, the remarks are quite interesting. We continue now with the analysis of the post-budget, and we have Ispak right here in studio, and Regina has that interview for you.
Indeed, very well said. Now we want to look at the tax measures and what that means for you, especially directly to your pocket, especially if you are in informal employment. Now, joining us this evening is Gerald Kithuku, who is a tax committee member at ISPEC and a partner at GMK Accountants. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Regina.
Is this something that Wanjiku can smile about from this budget?
Thank you, Regina. Wanjiku, in this year budget, very few we can pick. Let's
name them.
Is a drop in the ocean.
Okay.
So if you look at the analysis, if you look at the affordable housing, it's being imposed on formal sector. So most Wajikos are in formal sector. So that means they will not be under the threshold of the housing levy.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that the contribution by formal sectors will help Wajikos to afford affordable housing. You look at zero rating, LPG. LPG, the VAT has been reduced from 8 to 0%. So this is accessing, it's trying to minimize the use of shackle by Wajiko. It's trying to encourage green energy. And of course, it's now zero rated. That means even the producers of LPG will, of course, be able to reduce the cost of the product.
So from the top of your head, that is what we can say that the ups as far as Wanjiku is concerned.
Yeah, there is also another one. You look at the tea that is sold at the factory level.
Yes.
Currently, the VAT, it has the VAT price. But the proposal to remove the VAT on the sale of the tea at the factory level, that means the product is going to be affordable by Wanjiku. And of course, even the issue of the reduction of extra duty on transfer of money through the cellular phones. So of course, they're going to minimize the cost of
mobile money transfers.
Mobile fund money.
Now let's look at the downside, and I want to look at what was proposed there, and this is, the introduction of a two-tax band there. And I want to go back there because it's now a two-tax band of 32.5% for monthly incomes between 500 and 800, and 35% for incomes above 800,000 shillings. If you look at the demographic in terms of those who are in formal employment, well, it's a drop in the ocean. So we're not likely to see the much overall impact that, actually this tax band. But then let's look at the tax band within those who are earning a gross of 150,000 shillings in regard to this particular new taxation.
The issue of pay as you earn band.
Yes.
The expansion of the band now it has 5 bands. It has 10%, 25%, 30%. So those who are earning over 500 to 800 is at 2.5%, and over 800,000
35%
is at 5%. If you look at the ratio of Kenyan employment, most of the employees are earning less than 150,000 shillings. So, and this employee we look at they are up to 388 bands. So if you look at the one now earning over 800, these are people who are earning quite substantial amount of money. But the question is, what is the percentage? Is it a significant item that can generate revenue in this country?
That's the question, can it? Will it?
Where I'm studying is not. Because very few people, it's only the wealthy people who are in that tax band. And these are the people that they have got other obligations. These are people who are, their kids are in very expensive schools. These are people that are having medical schemes and all that. And these are people that you find that is a very insignificant level of employment that can
rather the objective. Yeah. We'll take a quick breather, but when we come back, we're going to be looking at other income tax measures and how they'll directly affect what you earn. We'll be back.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Alex Oduor, natoka Kamulu. Na leo imekuwa poa. Nilikuja na confidence nikijua naenda kuwin. Na nimewin 100,000 days hapa. Wale wanacheza Loto Moto waendelee, mkitu ya ukweli. Loto Moto, endelea kucheza kila siku.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Welcome to East Africa. This is Safari Rally Kenya.
The WRC Safari Rally set for June 22nd to June 25th in Naivasha. This year's event, the 7th leg of the WRC calendar, consisting of 19 stages, will see drivers, among them defending champion and series leader Khalid Vanpera, battle in what's considered as the toughest rally in the world. KBC Channel 1 will bring you the action to your living room, where a total of only 5 stages will be broadcast live on KBC Channel 1 and the Shakedown exclusive on our Facebook page. Catch the WRC Safari Rally on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Easy. What if he's not really dead?
I'd be very shocked to see his greedy brothers.
I'm not dead, Alice. You are to me. Do you think Dad had a will?
Of course he did.
Na kila mtu anajua nini anapata. Na will ilikuwa ni ya watoto.
Sasa ona aibu. Joel akiamka saa hizi atafikiria nini juu yako?
Mom needs you guys now.
You know, by now she's very vulnerable and gullible, I must say.
I need you to do everything in your power to get back with him.
What's in it for me?
Getting your husband back, of course.
Welcome back. Now, as we're talking matters tax. Now, the proposed budget, the introduction of a 5% of withholding tax when it comes to the gross payment in regard to digital content monetization, as well as the introduction of a digital asset tax of 3% on the value of digital assets transferred. We're talking about Bitcoin, crypto. At a time when government is really focused on digital transformation, what impact will these particular income tax measures have on this rather vibrant space?
Thank you. If you look at the government agenda is to promote digitization, and you find that in every year the tax proposals have to measure about digital services. So you look at the digital asset tax. This is a new tax that has been introduced in the country. We have been having the issue. We have having this asset. These are asset on cryptocurrency, for example. Yes. And this is a new tax that has come in. And if you look at the Kenya Kwanza government, one of the initiatives is to expand the tax base.
Okay.
This income was untapped before. And now they are saying that if you are in this business, or if you are dealing with cryptocurrency, then the excise tax of 3% will be imposed on that. It's a way of trying to generate revenue and try to ensure that the economy is sustainable.
Do you think this will discourage those who are already in this space and those who are looking to get into this space?
I'm looking at it a flip of the coin, because here is the person, the creator. He wants to promote his business, and the government on the other side. The government don't collect revenue, and one principle of tax is equity.
Equity.
Let everybody pay tax, but in accordance to his ability to pay.
Now, talking about equity, it seems that the gaming sector is also now, betting and gaming is a low-hanging fruit. We can say the proverbial sin tax area now there. We've seen the introduction of a 15% excise duty on fees charged on advertisement of alcoholic beverages, betting, gaming, lottery, and prize competition. This is meant to discourage consumption. Do you think it will?
I think it will.
Sure. Okay.
Because you look at it, the initiative is to discourage advertisement of alcoholic products, and once the tax is imposed, it's going to minimize consumption of that particular product.
But then look at it this way: these platforms that have been advertising, one of them is the broadcast platform. You know, print, traditional media. Those are some of the advertising companies. What then does this mean for, the corporate aspect of this particular, having this particular excise duty?
Okay, the corporate aspect I'm looking at is going to increase the cost of production.
True.
Because once you impose 15%, the cost of this production will be able to go up. It's going even to affect now the consumer of this particular product. But of late, as you're saying, of course, the government is trying to impose on betting and gaming. And you remember there was also now the introduction of the gaming, the withholding tax on gaming.
Yes.
The excise. Is it the excise?
Exable, yes.
Yeah,
it's
from 7.5% to 12.5%. The government was also intending to redefine what they mean by winning. So it was a way of trying to ensure that they try to maximize the revenue on betting, because it's addictive. And once it's addictive, the government is sure that it's going to collect revenue on that.
Now, government has been pushing and saying that it's going to create a conducive environment for local manufacturers to increase their output. Looking at the budget in its totality, do you think that this particular proposed budget has done justice to the manufacturing sector?
I'm looking at the manufacturing in incentives.
Yes.
Because I'm looking at there was an incentive. There is a proposal to claim diminution allowance. So those people are in manufacturing and they have got simple equipment. They can now claim 100% diminution allowance on that product. It's going to, of course, increase. It's going to ensure that the tax is minimized. There's also the issue of industrial building allowance. That if you construct a industrial building allowance at 10%, you can always claim.
So I'm hearing you're saying that there's something at least for the manufacturing sector.
Absolutely.
Now, also in this particular presentation, we had the CES also mention that a proposal to increase the Hustler Fund by another 10 billion shillings. What will this do to, in as far as access to credit by MSMEs is concerned?
Oh yeah, there was that proposal to increase the Hustler Fund by 10 billion.
Yes.
But I think the question I would ask is maybe what is the uptake of whatever has already been appropriated by the government. Yes. So the minister concern was is to go and help the SMEs, the people with disability, the women and the youth. So it will have an impact. But I think what is very important is the accountability of Hustler's Fund. So how has the government been able to manage what has already been issued? Is there a positive or a negative impact on what has been issued? But in the long run, if it's used well, if the government see leakages, of course it's going to spur the economy.
Now, away from matters tax, let me bring you back to, because when you talk about energy, when you talk about manufacturing, we talk about energy. There's this proposal to have the lines revert back from Kenya Power to Ketraco. What can we read from this particular proposal? Is it maybe, are we looking at, trying to minimize the monopoly of the power distributor? Or what might have gone through the mind of the drafters of this particular proposal?
I'll buy your sentiment, because the Kenyan government has been very keen on having a monopoly.
Yes.
And once they are able to dismantle some of the products from Kenya Power to Kentraco, of course now they're going to have some avenues. Of course they're looking at the service delivery by these institutions, but of course they are trying to ensure that there is harmony in the power sector.
Yeah. Another proposal as we come to a close is that the CS said that they're looking into having a review of our debt ceiling. Now that Kenya's debt ceiling is not anchored as a percentage to GDP, but the capacity of the country to pay. What is your take on that?
You look at the public debt.
Public debt, yes.
The public debt, if you look at in 2020, the public debt was capped at 10 billion.
Yes.
No, 10 trillion.
Yes.
And there have been debates in the parliament whether to increase depending with the government expenditure. We have been seeing the government appetite for debt.
Yes.
And there has been a conversation that has been ongoing. I think there is also a bill in parliament discussing the same, whether it should be based on the GDP.
Yes.
And I think there was a proposal that it should not exceed 55% of the GDP. So once you base on the GDP, then the capping of 10 trillion, of course, will be repealed. Will not be able to cap the borrowing. And of course, now when we have 55% of the GDP, of course, now we can even go as far as 15 trillion.
As a Kenyan, are you comfortable with the aspect that we can actually now have, more than, we have now that longitude or longevity to actually borrow more? Given, what we are seeing in as far as how we are using the monies that we are borrowing.
If you look at the Kenya Kwanza government, I think they have been hesitant to borrow,
yes,
especially externally. If you look at this year financial budget, it has a deficit of 718 billion.
Yes.
And if you look at out of that proportion, the government intends to borrow only 181 billion.
Yes.
And the 536 locally.
Yes.
So they are going to streamline because they have learned their own lesson. The cost of this debt, like in this financial budget 2023, they are going to pay. I think the amount of loan.
Yes,
will
actually,
be around
986.
Yeah, so they are already also they have decided now to try to mobilize their loan locally, and of course they're going to be a bit cheaper. Yeah.
As we close, one word: is this budget good for Kenya or not? As we close, get it.
I would say it's a moderate budget. It's a moderate budget because if you look at the proposals that were there before public participation, the government has listened to Wajiko. We have seen some dropout of very many proposals, like the 20% deposit before you make an appeal. There was also housing, although there's a lot of debate about it. There's reduction from so beauty products have been reduced. So I would say that the government's objective is to collect tax, and of course there's no way a taxpayer or a citizen will be happy when the budget is crossing. So I would say it's moderate. We have seen a lot of modification from the original, from the initial proposal, and now what we can read today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's positive. It's a mixed bag.
It's a mixed. So far, it's a mixed budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
A moderate budget. That says our guest tonight is none other than Gerald Kitiku, there, a tax committee member at ISPAC, as well as a member of the GMK accountants. That puts a cap on this evening's conversation, but we're not done in as far as matters of Prime Edition is concerned. Sports coming your way.
Biggest odds in the world every day on selected matches. Make a decision. Mozart Bet. the golden ticket. Mozart Bet Cup, 2 million shillings. CAF Confederations Cup. Kuwa mshindi. Mozart Bet Cup.
Ms. Daniel Wahoman, welcome to Sport. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u has proposed a 5% increase in betting tax in his budget read today at Parliament. In his proposal, taxes on betting firms will rise from the current 7.5% to 12.5% in a bid to discourage betting in the country and deny underage persons from engaging in betting and gaming. In addition, the Cabinet Secretary proposed amendments to Betting, Gaming and Lottery Act, Chapter 131.
It is clear that Mr. Speaker, currently the Kenya Revenue Authority has not been able to enforce tax correction from betting, gaming, prize competition and lotteries activities due to lack of an enforcement provision in the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act. In this regard, I propose to the National Assembly to amend this act to allow KRA to apply the provisions of Tax Procedures Act in enforcing tax correction.
Now, 18-year-old Tinasha Gatimo is said to be the youngest driver in the WRC Safari Rally Kenya when she partners with her mother Caroline Gatimo. The two are among 4 lady crews that have been sponsored by the Ministry of Sports in their endeavor to lift women in motorsport. Tinasha has been navigating her mother in the 4-wheel drive and decided to swap places in what is bound to be her biggest challenge on her debut. They teamed up during the first Kenya All-Women Rally last year, known as the Lioness Rally, where they came second. The WRC Safari Rally Kenya will be held from the 22nd to the 25th of this month, with 5 stages being televised live on KBC Channel 1.
I think we'll be good. We've sorted out most of the pre-rally stuff already, so hopefully when we get in there, no mishaps will happen and we won't be getting angry at each other.
And we did it at Kasarani when one of the stretches told me, Mom, go, that means press on it, kanyaga, twende, you know? So there's no time to get angry at each other. So, because honestly, you get angry, it overtakes your emotions and your mindset. So we're just positive and hope to stay happy with each other at the end of the day.
Countries that will take part in the inaugural Giants of Africa Youth Basketball Festival from the 13th to the 19th of August in Rwanda. The festival will bring together more than 250 youth from 16 countries. It will be used to celebrate 20 years of empowering the youth as it aims to inspire and encourage them. Key themes of the event will be basketball, education, culture and entertainment. 3 events, namely the Boys Championship, the Girls Championship and the All-Star Game, will take place at the BK Arena. And now, across our borders, Croatia beat the Netherlands 4-2 in an entertaining UEFA Nations League semi-final clash played in Rotterdam last night. Croatia will face either Italy, but they will feature in 5 years.
Croatia are one win from their first major title after beating the host Netherlands in a dramatic UEFA Nations League semi-final. Daniel Malane opened the score for the host in the 34th minute. Only for Andrej Kramaric to equalize for the 2018 World Cup finalists from the penalty spot 10 minutes after the break. Croatia went ahead in the match in the 72nd minute when Mario Pasalic slotted home from the close range.
Fired in, and it's a brilliantly taken goal. And Croatia have turned it around with Pasalic.
But the hearts were broken by Noah Lang, who equalized for the Dutch in the last minutes of added time to force the game into extra time. Bruno Petkovic came off the bench to give Croatia the lead through a thumping effort in the 98th minute.
De Jong turned. Oh, what a strike that is! Magnificent from distance.
Captain Luka Modric signed off Croatia's win with a penalty in the 116th minute.
Just lunges at it. Cement their place in the final. You bet he can.
To book them a place in the Nations League final, where they will face either Italy or Spain. Italy and Spain square off in the other semi-finals match tonight in Netherlands.
And that's the sport for tonight. Remember, tomorrow we'll be giving you more highlights of tonight's Diamond League meeting in Oslo, and also keep you updated on what's happening in the WRC Safari Rally. My name is Daniel Wahome. Have a good evening.
The cup with the golden ticket. Mozart Bet Cup, 2 million shillings. CAF Confederations Cup. Kuwa mshindi. Mozart Bet Cup.
Well, that's it for today. But before we finish, there are a few comments on tonight, and a lot of them have to do with the interviews by my partner in crime tonight, Regina. Regina, please just come in and join us. A lot of people were saying that they enjoyed the interviews, but people were saying it's interesting that they've seen a positive and different aspect of the budget. What should we expect from the next reading?
Now, what is going to happen with this particular budget, now that it has been tabled, it has to go through the motions when it comes to know how bills are passed.
Yes.
And my greatest worry is that we're likely to see a similar showdown with what we saw yesterday with the finance bill, with now even a section of Azimio leaders saying now they're preparing to go, bit by bit, every proposal, especially the income tax measures there, and with the housing levy and also the inclusion, especially the VAT that has been raised, or rather proposed to be raised to 16%. But it was quite interesting also when we had the economist there, Jim McPhee, saying that, those who drive a car can actually afford to pay a little bit more on the pump. But then the question is the overall and the multiplier effect of having the VAT on fuel.
I think he was quite objective, but I could hear the passion that you have for the Wanjiko.
I mean, Wanjiko, at the end of the day, if you ask me today what I think about this budget is that I'm happy for one and one reason only. When was the last time you bought a 13 kg of LPG gas? How much was it going for? Let's say in general around 3,500, depending.
Yes.
So now with the latest proposal, it means LPG gas, if you like, is going to be more affordable.
Yes, and that's some of the good news and the gainers. We will continue to give you the analysis. I can just hear my director saying that's enough. Let's move on. But from us and the rest of the team, we would like to wish you a very good night.
Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, KIPRA, invites you to the 6th KIPRA Annual Regional Conference to be held at Pwani University in Kilifi County from 21st to 23rd June 2023. The conference brings together state and non-state actors to exchange views on accelerating the economic growth and development for arid and semi-arid lands, ASALs, in Kenya. The key areas of discussions during the conference include the following: economic system in ASALs, infrastructure development, human capital development, creative economy and tourism, governance, peace and security, natural resources and agriculture, trade and finance, and inclusive growth. To participate, visit www.kipraconference.org or call 0724 256 078. KIPRA, thinking policy together.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Alex Odur, natoka Kamulu. Na show leo imekuwa poa. Nilikuja na confidence nikijua naenda kuwin. Na nimewin 100,000 hizi hapa. Wale wanacheza Loto Moto waendelee, ni kitu ya ukweli. Loto Moto, endelea kucheza kila siku.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Iwapo unakohoa, unahisi uchungu kwenye kifua, uchovu kila wakati, joto jingi mwilini, unakosa hamu ya kula au kupoteza uzito haraka bila kukusudia, na kutokwa na jasho jingi usiku, waweza kuwa waugua TB.
You look at the framework today in Kenya, and where the men are. What are some of the things you feel like, hey boss, we need to pull our socks here? If masculinity is defined by how many women you have, they said 40 is the new 30, the new 20. Inaka ukifika 40 lazima utafute kaklande. What are some of the disciplines we need to have as men?
TB yaweza kuangamiza jamii yako. Usikubali. Matibabu ni bila malipo katika hospitali zote za serikali.